Today I'm honored to be here with my friend Blue Tiger, who who is helping me with the technical aspects of my interviews and uh, is involved in his own film projects and has become interested in the work I'm doing with my book and my DVDs and so forth. So I'm really thrilled that we can talk again and talk about him and his projects and how meeting each other has affected us both. How
Yeah,
are you
thanks
doing?
for having me, Bruce.
Oh, you bet, you bet. Like I said, I'm honored and pleased, and I think that the wonderful thing about today's technology is the weaving and networking of energies goes on non-locally. It's really a global thing, huh? Um,
Yeah, it's crazy.
it is crazy, and it's just coming in time, I think, to where the interconnectedness is getting really intense. Yeah, why don't you tell me how you first came across my work? Somebody else you connected with? Did he
Yeah,
connect with you?
well, my friend Lewis, who I am featuring in my film A Blue Flower, he connected me with Toby Johnson after Toby had commented on one of his YouTube videos for A Blue Flower. And so then Toby
Oh,
Johnson, from what I understand, is your publisher for The Secret of the Golden Palace. For Leith Press. So then he just um, thought I should get in contact with you after hearing about my darkroom experience. I spent 14 days in complete darkness, and
right.
that sort of began to stimulate a chemical called dimethyltryptamine. And he had
Mm.
just recommended that I contact you because it sounded like you were looking into some of the same things, but from a completely different perspective. So,
Yeah, yeah. Toby Johnson is my editor at Lady Press, and I'm honored to. He's an amazing man, and he's one of the pillars of gay spirituality. Although I think your film and my books are not aimed only at gay people,
mm-mm.
but that is kind of a perspective from which the work comes in some ways.
Right.
And um, Toby is my editor there, and he's won the Lambda Award, which is like the Oscars of gay book publishing and so forth. He's an amazing man, a brilliant man, and so Toby let me know that he had been in touch with you, and in fact you had interviewed him, and I watched this amazing, wonderful interview you did with him on YouTube, and so I got in touch with you, I guess is what I did. Is that right? I emailed you or
Well, I
and
think both you and Toby did, so I got bombarded by both of you.
well, that's right. In fact, I remember what happened is the first thing was Toby said there's a fellow down in Florida who I would like your permission to send a copy of the final
Right.
manuscript, although I think we probably made a few little tweaks to it after that. So now you've got the final thing. And in fact, I'll be happy to send you hard copy of the paperback, which
Awesome.
I want to show that on the site now, just because I think I may have showed it to you, but it's really amazing to see anytime you write a book and it's published. I did 66 drawings uh, to illustrate this book too, and it's just an honor to see my work actually come to fruition. The Kindle version of any book now tends to sell a lot more than
Yeah,
the paperback,
that's
which
what I
is
have. Yeah.
in today's technology. Although I'll send you a hard copy just for fun sometime
Thank you.
if you want. Yeah, I'd be honored. Anyway, tell me how. Uh, First of all, tell me how talking with Toby influenced your thinking and your experience.
Well, he sort of was the first person to explicitly and for a great length of time sort of link, um, you know, my sexuality, being gay, with, spirituality, with being connected to, ourselves and um, to this thing we call the divine, or, however you want to phrase it. Um, and so I think, coming from a background that's very, religious and more fundamental and strict, my sexuality has been something that is obviously, at the forefront of, um, my struggles and, coming out as a gay man,
Sure.
sort of, you know, even I guess it's been like 4 years now. Um, it was a very spiritual experience, and I
Yeah.
just had never really, um, until I met Toby, connected the link so much between like who we are, because of the experiences that we've
Sure.
had,
Hmm.
coming out of the closet, and sort of
Yeah.
standing up for ourselves and really owning um, that
Right.
gay spirituality that he talks about. It was just really awesome to kind of connect with him and I guess explore that side of myself and own it more than I ever had before. It's sort of like
Great.
um, before I might have been a little bit embarrassed to say, yeah, I'm spiritual. Like, what does that mean? But
Mhm.
I think I have more of an ownership over it now.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And what do you think it does? You mentioned that it kind of, connects what does it do to disconnect your spirituality and your sexuality? What does it do to you?
Well, it's just coming from a place of disconnection, like you said, where you grow up thinking. I grew up thinking that my sexuality has to be completely separate from my spirituality because God doesn't approve of my
Right.
sexuality.
Right.
So coming from that, completely like dividing yourself into two separate things, two separate beings almost, and then realizing, in the end, what Toby talks about is that they're both
Mhm.
completely compatible and they're almost the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you felt a little different after you talked to him, that it really produced a little bit of a shift?
Yeah, it was really awesome.
Yeah. Great. Well, he's a wise man and a brilliant man, who I love, and I really I cherish the fact that he's a friend. He lived here in our neighborhood. He and his partner lived here for several years, a while back, and my own partner has known him for many years longer than I had, and realized that Toby and I would probably really hit it off and be good friends. And sure enough, we were. He's just a warm and wise and beautiful human being, as well as a brilliant scholar. And you probably are aware that he was actually he was a priest of a kind, and then he left the priesthood to study psychology, and he studied with Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist in New
Right.
York City, and which is an incredible experience. Joseph Campbell is the person who has made mythology come to life for many modern people. And the
And
Star Wars movies we owe them basically to Joseph Campbell's influence.
yeah, and coming from I'm a film student, so I hear all about Joseph Campbell,
Yep,
and how to write a screenplay and stuff like that. So
sure.
to be connected with Toby Johnson is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. So anyway, Toby sent you a PDF, I guess, of my book, and thank you for reading it, because I know that reading a PDF is a little bit tedious.
Oh no, I couldn't put it down. Put
Oh
it
wow.
down figuratively.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't turn it off, and your eyes were getting blurry. No, tell me what it was like, and what was the effect on you of reading it? What was the experience like when you actually?
Yeah, it it just spoke to me so much because as a male, you grow up having this thing between your legs, and it's there for a few specific functions, but that's it pretty much. And your book just completely blew me away because it opens up a whole new world of opportunity and experience. And I've been on this quest to find what I call is a blue flower,
Hmm.
something that can provide its user. If you find this blue flower, it can be something that can heal you and um, reconnect you, and it's supposed to be something that's impossible. It doesn't exist. So reading your book especially was really, really interesting for me because you start talking about this, blue water lily of ancient Egypt and how it's actually, you know, symbolic of a phallus. And that was when I was like, okay, I know I'm being connected to Bruce for a reason.
Yeah, something kind of. Well, that's really great, and like you said, the I was also really struck the first time we talked about that or communicated it. Maybe it was an email when you first mentioned that. But for example, the blue lotus in Egypt, not only is a symbol that it represented what they call the Lord of Fragrances, the god Nefertum, who is the spirit of they call it the blue lotus, even though, as you mentioned, it's a water lily called Nymphea caerulea. But in Egypt, this flower was used as kind of a recreational drug. It has properties similar to Viagra as an aphrodisiac, and it also is a mild euphoriant. These are subtle, but the Egyptians were such celebratory people that if they were really getting into this and dissolving it in their wine, it would definitely have contributed to their celebrations and their rites,
Right.
which were probably pretty orgiastic anyway, because they were happy, celebratory type people. Yeah. But anyway, what was the influence of the book in terms of how it changed what you felt about yourself and your sexuality?
Okay. Yeah, it's an ongoing process, obviously, but
Sure.
you know, your book goes into explicit detail about mindful masturbation is sort of like the first step that men can try out and experience for themselves, and you know it was just a different experience for me to like relax into that, because for so long, you know, the sexual part of my life has been limited to an hour of the day or even less, and sort of just compartmentalized into one section, and
Mhm.
didn't see how it related to the rest of my waking and sleeping time.
Yeah,
It was very compartmentalized, and I think the
sure.
biggest thing that I've realized so far, after reading and applying the principles in your book, is that it's opened um, it's opened my sexual practice into a much like wider spectrum. It's something that is okay to do any time of the day or all day even. I
Yeah,
remember after reading your book,
absolutely.
like a few weeks afterwards, one day I just decided instead of going into the office to edit my film, I would stay home all day,
Wow.
and just mindfully masturbate, and that was
Wow, that's
an
great.
incredible experience. It was a very freeing experience. I felt lazy at first, I felt like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but
Right. Right.
it was definitely what I needed to do.
Yeah. Well, you were indulging yourself in a good way. We're often taught that self-indulgence, there's a bad thing about that. But you were indulging yourself in a positive way when you did that. You spent a whole day
Yeah,
masturbating.
it's self love.
It is. That's in a sense that's one of the key messages of my book is that, the secret of the golden phallus is loving yourself. But it has to occur physically and in the erotic sense too,
Right,
right?
right. And it's so easy as sometimes to talk about loving yourself in a just a an emotional sense. Um,
Exactly. That's pretty easy and comfortable the way we're trained. There's a little bit of conditioning about, oh, is it selfish to love yourself? Maybe you should love other people more.
right,
And it's interesting, even though I really avoid getting too specific about religious stuff in this book because some people are not comfortable with that. But even in the Gospels, Jesus doesn't say love your neighbor more than yourself. It's love your neighbor as you love yourself, is what
right.
that language really means. In other words, those are one and the same. They're
Yeah, I mean, you can't love other people if you don't love yourself, is how I think of it.
and I think that very few people really actively love themselves. And those of us who are working on it, it's a work in progress. Like you sort of said something that indicated that it's an ongoing, it's a process. And I think you can't just you try to love yourself and then you arrive and you're there. That doesn't
Right.
happen.
But there is a paradigm shift that your book sort of instigates. There is like a moment where it clicks. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the secret. Like this is what I know what I need to do now. And then you're right. Then it's an ongoing process.
Wow. And so what do you need to do?
Well, love yourself, but in a very physical way.
Yeah, well, not separating the physical. You mentioned compartmentalized, and what happens due to our conditioning, I think to most men in particular, and women are often cut off from their head is cut off from their body in a sense because they are told, they should not be these physical erotic beings. And I think women are a little less prone to really become this way because, we're in a male dominant culture, which means the men are the more fragile, vulnerable creatures in reality because they're supposedly on top of everything. But the truth is they're not empowered to be authentic animal beings. So men, this is why men wear a tie around their neck in business circumstances. It cuts their head off from their body. They're rational beings. They're in charge and all this, this macho stuff.
Yeah.
So their head's cut off from their body. And because of all the inhibitions about sexuality and the penis and masturbation, their penis is cut off from the rest of their body functionally. And it's compartmentalized, even if there's somebody who has a lot of fun with sexuality and masturbation, usually it's very secret and private.
Right.
Pushed away into this little part of their life, and it's hidden.
Yeah, and I think that for me that started growing up because
Sure.
Especially when you're still living at your parents' house and it's not something you talk about. You have to hide away in your room and be very quiet and hope nobody ever notices.
Right, like probably when you were a boy and if you were masturbating, you try not to make noise, like when you ejaculate,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
You're like, they'll notice what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And one thing you need to do if you haven't done this is in my DVDs also, is to release yourself, and you've probably already done this, from any inhibition when you're, when I have an orgasm, I'm noisy, and my partner sometimes freaks out because I'm like, sometimes. But it's very liberating to do that because of those inhibitions, are blocking. They're literally blocking energy flow and circulation of nervous system signals in your body,
Yeah, and also what you encourage to do is, move around a lot and change positions, and that was something new for me too, and that's very freeing to be able to just move the energy around the room.
Absolutely, and move your body into all the different positions and around the room, like you said, So how has this experience of reading the book, and you're also working sometimes with the DVDs that I produced also, right? You've watched.
I mean, I have watched them. Generally, it's more working with my fiance and I just,
Right.
on our own.
Did he watch the DVDs with you? Oh no!
No, he's not.
Yeah.
No.
Your assignment too, though, Mr. Phelps, if you choose to accept it, is on this possible mission is also to go back and there's scenes where those beautiful men in the woods and stuff are demonstrating their practice, and there's scenes where some of them are sharing, and some of those I challenge you to practice with them too while you watch it. I don't know if you did. Did you?
I did a little bit, but
you're sort of studying.
I have to be honest with you. It's I don't know. I'm not at the point where all the time I can just masturbate with anyone and everyone. Like
Rip it out and.
I think some people are attractive and some people aren't. It's different for everybody.
Oh yeah.
So it's much easier, let's say, to practice with my fiance than it would be to practice with the DVDs.
I understand that. Those guys are all older. They're all like at least 40 or something like that.
Maybe I could make a new video for you.
No, I'm serious. This is something I've really been wanting to do, Blue, is to make the same kind of DVDs with some younger guys, and I'm aware of some younger men who are really, really into this and are really excellent, in terms of they're worth emulating. I mean, I think that's the point is when you're creating this kind of footage, which, you've talked about making sacred porn, which would be very tasteful, beautiful, and inspiring erotic stuff, right? Yeah, and I think the point is that you learn when you start making this kind of film is that the energy that the person is putting out is just as important as how they look, It's not really as crucial what they look like, as you know, and I was very inhibited myself, and Joseph Kramer, you know, just laughs at that because he thinks my teachings are really good there. I still am kind of self-conscious about that. You know, I'm actually a pretty shy person.
Huh.
And the funny thing is, you know, I was talking with somebody on Skype one time not long ago, and I said, you know, well, you're kind of an exhibitionist, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, but he said, but I'm shy. And I said, oh yeah. And then I thought of it, and he said, you know, I think that exhibitionists tend to be kind of shy. And at first I thought, does that make sense? And then I thought, what he's really saying is maybe that's why they want to be seen and witnessed, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, I hadn't really thought of it that way. So anyway, how did this reading the book, how did it affect how you felt about your body in general?
I think it was a slow process of reclaiming it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not feeling embarrassed at all about erotically touching myself all over, and
Right.
um,
Good.
not being embarrassed. It's really, to be honest, it's just not being ashamed of feeling intense pleasure, and that's not a it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. And especially when you're, you know, when you yourself are causing that pleasure, it's a self pleasure. That's when
Right.
it's like, ooh, is this like too wrong? Like, is this, this feels too good to be right.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't deserve it, or there's something wrong with it because it's so intense and
Right.
wonderful.
So it's sort of like, really opening your heart to your own magnificence and, your own self worth.